It took 39 years for a cold murder case to heat back up in Carbon County. In 2009, a Carbon County Sheriff's detective worked on the case surrounding Loretta Jones' death. And after 46 years, an arrest was finally made and the suspect convicted. We shared the conclusion with you back in November. Tonight, in a special Behind the Badge report, we meet the man who took on the challenge and took the time to find justice for Loretta.
When he admitted that he killed her, goosebumps ran up and down me, and I had to control myself because, my first instinct is to get him up and handcuff him and drive him back to Utah.
That is how the 46-year-old murder case against Thomas Edward Egley would finally be solved. But to understand why Detective David Brewer took on the Loretta Jones case and worked on it for 7 years, we need to back up to 2002.
I was 38 when I went to the academy, and I figured it's probably best if I start now before I can't run.
Detective Brewer certainly got a late start in law enforcement. For years, he was a Subway franchise owner, but he wanted to serve and protect, so he sold his stores and became a cop.
It may sound corny, but when I owned Subway and stuff, one of my favorite shows was Cops, and I would get furious watching some of these things. You just wanted to go chase them yourself. Copy, thank you.
A few years into the job, he would get involved in one of the longest chases in Utah law enforcement history.
I walked up to him at the Helper Arts Festival, and I told him that I had something I need to talk to him about.
Heidi Jones told him about her mother's rape and brutal murder in 1970, how she found her mom stabbed to death when she was just 4 years old, and how the Price, Utah case had never been solved.
It kind of excited me, the whole thought of a cold case. This was my first one as being a detective. I never had a cold case before, and there was a lot of old wives' tales, a lot of urban legends about this case, most of which were exaggerated over the years, but it was enough just to keep you, excited about it.
Still, there were times it appeared the case had hit dead ends.
I remember just crying, and he's like, "It's okay, Heidi, it's okay. You need to cry."
Heidi says, despite setbacks, Detective Brewer would not give up building a case against her mother's killer.
To have somebody actually excited about it, and somebody that was working it and asking questions and wanted to know more about it, it was a dream come true for me.
Detective Brewer says the case really started to move forward when they found Egley's former girlfriend.
She told stories about, his late arrival about 3 a.m. that morning, some of his actions and taking clothes out and not returning his clothes that he had on that night.
He eventually interviewed Egley at his home in Colorado.
We prepared the questions carefully and talked to him, and stuff that he would have only known as the murderer in this case, he knew. And so that really kept it going.
Then Detective Brewer made sure that when they exhumed Loretta's body, Egley heard about it and was made aware they were getting DNA samples. He says after that, it appeared Egley knew his 46-year-old secret was out, and he simply confessed.
Then he just started talking and said that he killed Loretta Jones.
But because that happened in Colorado, where Detective Brewer had no arresting powers, he had to leave Egley's house empty-handed.
We knew he had to walk out of that house after 7 years of investigating without the man who just admitted to doing this crime. So it was a tough deal to do. It was hard to control myself, but kind of had to maintain a good poker face and walk out of there, and told him we'd be back in touch.
From a police standpoint, Brewer says the rest was easy.
After that, we came home, got all the attorney stuff put together, and got the U.S. Marshals to go out there and arrest him for us.
Egley waived his preliminary hearings, confessed to the murder of Loretta Jones, and was sentenced. After 46 years, the case was finally closed. And because of Detective Brewer's work, Heidi says she finally had a portion of peace.
And to be able to have a detective come in and do what he's done is just phenomenal. I can't give him enough praise. I really can't. And I know, he'll try to say he's just doing his job, but no, he changed my life. He really changed my life. The little 4-year-old Heidi, she's not so sad anymore. Loretta and her sisters used to wear a charm. Heidi gave that charm to Detective Brewer when he started investigating, hung it on his police car, still has it there today. Now, if you want to know more about this story, I'm going to have a Facebook Live conversation at the end of the newscast for any questions. There's also more information online with this story. To check it out and nominate an officer for a future story, go to goodforutah.com/badge.
Time now for you. You're watching ABC4 Utah. News at 10. good for Utah.
When you think about firefighters, what comes to mind? Many of us imagine them bravely fighting the hot flames, the choking smoke to save homes and save lives. That certainly happens, but the reality these days is about 90% of 911 calls have nothing to do with fire. We wanted to see what it's like to always be ready to respond, so the ABC4 Special Projects team, including me, spent 24 hours with one of the busiest firehouses in Utah. We ran on calls with them, we ate with them, we spent the night at the station. Here's tonight's special Behind the Badge report, 24 hours with Station 41.
You having any pain right now anywhere?
Firefighter and paramedic Nate Smith assesses and treats a woman who fell and hit her face and head.
This is gonna sting.
It's a type of call that he and fellow firefighters from Station 41 in South Salt Lake handle every single day.
How's that feel? Any numbness or tingling anywhere?
It's not a life or death situation, but it requires a ride in an ambulance to the hospital.
And every call is different. Even the calls that are the same are different.
For Smith and the other firefighters, every call is a chance to serve.
There's a lot of calls we go on where they're maybe not emergent or there's not a lot for us to do. But those calls where we actually do intervene and we do provide care, I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment about being able to be there for that person.
But before they can respond to calls like this, the team begins each morning getting prepared.
Go through all of our medical gear.
578-935.
We go through all of our chainsaws, look at our hoses, make sure everything's good.
Do we have white toast?
This day, they actually had a chance to enjoy breakfast and each other's company before the calls began. First, a panic attack.
That might be a factor as well.
She's wanting to seek further care at the hospital on her own.
Then, a 911 call for chest pain.
I see your arm, man. We're gonna take your blood pressure.
That was followed by a two-car accident just one block from the fire station. Firefighters say no matter what the call, they just try to help however they can.
I have always liked to help people. That is just something that's, I don't know where it came from, but it's just instilled in me, and I love to help people.
And that help would be needed 8 more times during our visit. There were a couple of psych calls.
Have you been taking them like you're supposed to?
Then medical calls.
The room is spinning, but you feel weak.
And there was an accident involving a handful of cars out on I-15. Battalion Chief Kent Robertson.
When we're out working on a call, somebody's having a really bad day.
And this time, that bad day is affecting a lot of people.
I'm sure a few of them are hurt. We're going to find out later.
Call after call, we watched the 6-man crew respond with speed and expertise. And in between calls, we learned doing this for a living can take its toll.
When I'm on the call, I have a job and I have a goal and I provide that care. It's not till we step away from that situation that we kind of look back and go, wow, that was pretty intense.
We also learned about how many horrible accidents and sad situations that they have to deal with.
What we see isn't necessarily something that anybody should see.
And we learned just how taxing it can be both mentally and emotionally.
There's becoming a lot more awareness about the mental health of first responders and that kind of secondary PTSD of constantly seeing traumatic events and dealing with people in their worst times and the emotional and having to kind of carry that along, with you.
So how do first responders cope with this? They say they each have their own way.
Sometimes I just go home and hug my kids, a little longer than normal, and sometimes I go straight to the gym and let off steam that way. Staying active, I think, helps.
The fire department is very aware. In fact, more and more efforts are being made to let firefighters know help is available. And it's something Chief Robertson watches carefully.
As soon as I know that something bad has happened, I'm at that station and we're talking about it and we're dealing with it as a group, and then I'll check with them on their days off.
While those issues are very real, when you watch these firefighters and medics in action, you don't hear complaining. You just hear how much they care.
Going on those calls, helping people, and feeling like you actually make a difference in somebody's life, I think that's one of the most rewarding things.
And you see how much they love their jobs.
I'll do it until the day I can't do it anymore.
Now, to hear more about these first responders or to ask some questions about this report, we're going to be live on the ABC4 Facebook page at about 10:35 after the newscast. And to nominate an officer or firefighter for a future story, or again see this story, go to goodforutah.com/badge. At this very moment, an Orem police sergeant is at Salt Lake International. In a few minutes, he'll get on a plane and make his way to the Dominican Republic. Now, he isn't going to get a criminal. He's going to give out gifts, specifically baseballs and baseball gear. His love of the game and people in need started a very unique effort, and his love of police work and his unique career make him this week's Behind the Badge Police Profile.
Can you show me 10-6, 10-19 for a few minutes?
For 19 years, Sergeant Bill Crook has patrolled the streets and served the people of Orem.
Worked undercover, I've worked, in different specialty positions. I train officers.
He's been the Narcotics Officer of the Year, the Orem Police Officer of the Year, and received other awards for his police work.
We worked that case for about 2 years. When we took that down, we got, a lot of satisfaction. We took a lot of people to jail. It's like every day is an adventure. Every call is an adventure.
But all this great police work almost didn't happen. Crook started off working as a paralegal.
But I didn't like being in an office, and the classes that I took in college that were criminal justice based, I just loved them. They made sense and it was enjoyable. I talked to a friend of mine that used to be a police officer. He said, don't do it. I went against his better judgment, against his advice, and I've loved every minute.
But Sergeant Crook isn't just about busting the bad guys. He's also about baseball. In fact, he loves baseball.
In high school, I started reading about the game, collecting baseball cards, and studying the history of baseball, studying the players of baseball, the situations, just everything about it.
He recently opened a batting cage business in Orem. 4 years ago, he and his family began hosting players from the Orem Owls Rookie League team, developing friendships with players from the Dominican Republic and learning about the poverty there and how important baseball is.
Dominican Republic's an island. The only way to get off there is have a lot of money or be a baseball player. Their whole goal in life is just to be a baseball player.
So Sergeant Crook came up with an idea. Collect baseballs, baseball gloves, and jerseys and take them to the kids in the Dominican Republic.
It's just nice to be able to go down and take something that would almost mean little to us, but it means so much to them. To go to a ball field and give these kids a new baseball, it's just amazing. They look at it like it's the greatest thing ever.
The DR delivery is now in its 3rd year.
This is a picture from last year when I took my son.
And Sergeant Crook hopes not only to continue the annual trips, but someday expand the effort.
I coach a Little League baseball team now, and my dream is to take that team down there and play baseball and go to the fields where some of my friends are.
If you'd like to help out Sergeant Crook's effort, he has a GoFundMe account. You can go to our website, goodforutah.com/badge, and check out this story. It'll actually be on there in just a couple of minutes as I'm still working on it. And while you're there, you can nominate an officer for a future Behind the Badge story.